Hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and I think I'm about halfway done with Metaphor Refantazio. I've been actively avoiding spoilers, so I'm taking a shot in the dark with this, and I'm going to call this my halfway impressions, because looking at the in-game calendar, it goes up to October, and I am now like knee-deep into August, so we'll call it halfway. In my first impressions video, I believe I said that if the game continued at the pace that I was enjoying it, that it was highly likely this game would enter my Game of the Year race. It would be in like my top 3 at minimum. I am now of the opinion that there is a higher likelihood than not that this game ends up being my Game of the Year for 2024. This game is everything I've wanted out of Atlus for a few years at this point, and even more. It's not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a game where the sum total of its parts, in my opinion, paint a very clear, well-paced, and provocative picture. It's a game that incorporates elements, even in the story, that ordinarily I would find off-putting, but because of just how well told this game is, and just how well executed it is on the whole, I find it compelling instead of off-putting. And I'll cover that more in a future video, concerning the politics of Metaphor Refantazio, because this is a very politically forward game. It is not shy about what it's trying to do or what it's talking about, and I think it does a really good job at it. But like, that's easily a rabbit hole that, honestly, I would not do justice here in this video. I want to play a little bit more, and then make its own video about that. But for my halfway impressions, they're glowing across the board, in regards to every element. The soundtrack, do I need to say anything? Right? Like, it's Atlus. We expect good soundtracks. Were we expecting it to be this good, though? The music across the board I find compelling, or just fun. And like, that's a really good summation for this game. It's compelling and fun. I always have this weird like mental space going into these new long-form RPGs because I am a creature of habit. And when you're telling me, okay, we're going to have another 100+ hour adventure with all of these characters, I initially find it hard to believe that I'm going to like the characters as much as, say, characters from RPGs that I've been playing for years and I'm really well acquainted with. Games like Persona 3, 4, or 5, especially since this is an Atlus game. I think I'm around halfway, if not a bit before that. I'm like 40 hours into the game at this point. Granted, a couple of those were grinding, but they do such a good job in this game of characterization, character development, and keeping these characters relevant throughout the experience. And I think it's because Atlus is refining those Persona mechanics in so many great ways that make me so optimistic about the potential state of Persona 6. One of the biggest elements of Persona that it's most known for are the social mechanics. Leveling up your social stats, the social links, and hanging about town. In Metaphor Refantazio, it's not just one town. You're going around this fantasy world, going to various towns and locations, talking with new people and all that. But you have social stats in this game, they're called royal virtues, and you have social links called followers in this game. And what this game elects to do is all of those moments that would be relegated for basic grinding and just scheduling, which I found compelling in Persona, don't get me wrong, but here, instead of just leveling up a social stat or doing some grindy activity in the overworld, they relegate those moments in time for more character moments to inject these like grindy elements with character. Oh, you want to level up courage while you're on the gauntlet runner? You can like hang out with Stroll and he can yap about weapons. These scenes by themselves are nothing to write home about, but when you are going on this like very long adventure that Atlus is known to put you on, games that can go for 80 to 100 if not 120 hours long depending upon how you pace yourself, having these little moments interspersed throughout the bigger moments of the main story help to expand the cast of characters, keep them relevant, and add characters to them, and always keep them relevant, and to also help hone in on the interpersonal dynamics of the cast of characters. They help make these characters not just one-dimensional, but multi-dimensional, showing different elements to their personality and their relationship to the MC, or even their relationship to each other. When you're reading books, you read with Galax book, and you bounce off each other in regards to talking about the book you're reading and what it could mean. She posits questions to you that you can answer to gain additional points if you want. You can debate various characters in town periodically to gain additional stats, but also it gives you a feeling as to how the people in that location feel in regards to the politics going on, but also how the character you're debating, which sometimes are characters that you know, how they feel about the state of the world. And you combine that with the actual story and character development we get in the main story on top of the follower stories we get, and this game seemingly at every turn and at every opportunity tries to inject character and personality into the equation in ways you didn't expect it to originally. When you're cooking food, oh, you learn a bit about that character and how they view food, or how the place they come from views food. Heismay's hometown is known for bread and baking, so anything that involves baking bread, he'll help you out and teach you a bit about that. Hulkenberg is very utilitarian from a time as a knight. Stroll knows his way around meat. Pause. So if you're dealing with dishes that have meat as a centerpiece, he'll be the one to guide you. Again, these scenes by themselves don't contribute much, but when you take them all together, they make it so you never really run into a stretch of time in this game without being reminded of these characters, without expanding or developing or just allowing these characters to breathe and not feel as if the tension's high all the time, or there's only one stake and they're all caring about this one thing. No, we can see them in downtime, in times of stress, in times of a great emotion, or just in times of quiet. Having these slower moments that happen alongside the grinding enable, for me at least, that satisfaction I get from scheduling my time accordingly from Persona, but alongside additional moments of just characterization. And for a very long story that Metaphor Refantazio is shaping up to be, having these moments, in my opinion, is important, because you have to properly pace the experience so nothing drags on too much, but that also that the characters themselves have significant and sufficient depth to where I care about them for this stretch of time. Having a game be like 80 to 120 hours long is a significant ask by the game's pod on the player, and I think this game does a great job of making me care enough and to be invested to want to continue playing, to learn more about these characters and to experience more with these characters. This game is a ton of fun, and it shows this level of competence in nearly every element of it. Let's talk dungeon design. Clear inspiration from, say, the Persona 5 idea of things, where you have these dungeons be set pieces in of themselves, little contributions to the overall narrative where you learn more about these characters as you progress throughout the dungeon. There's little moments, these little scenarios that can happen, like trying to evade from giant monsters, being posed choices, how you want to tackle certain things, having more time with various characters instead of just being linear corridors. The main dungeons, at least, take their time to contribute to the overall plot and the pacing. Having said that, I think this is also where the game trips up a little bit, namely in the side dungeons, because I think they are solidly okay, but compared to the main dungeons, they're inoffensive, but they're not particularly memorable for me. They're just kind of pits filled with enemies, or the objective you need to accomplish within the zone. There may be the occasional secret, or like the occasional secret passage you can go down, namely in like tombs or crypts you can find crawl spaces you can crawl into. Very rudimentary, very one-dimensional, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just there's nothing about these side dungeons that has been particularly memorable for me outside of the first Goblin dungeon from sheer difficulty at the time when I did it. But they're a good opportunity to grind. I would like a little bit more visual variety, which I'm starting to get out of these dungeons, but there's a lot that kind of feel claustrophobic, or it's like, hey, you have a jungle zone, or you're going to go into a crypt, or like a mausoleum, or something like that. I did do one recently where I had to climb this tower, and yeah, it kind of is what you expect. It's a tower you climb. climb, and it's just each floor is like one room filled with enemies. You keep going up. But I had a great fight at the top of this tower, dude. It was another goblin dungeon, but this guy was a big Chad of a goblin, right? For the final dungeon boss. His whole stick was he would charge up like 4 times over, and you really didn't want him to hit you. But I was running low on MP because the big goblins in this dungeon, for some reason, have about as much HP as the turtle boss from Final Fantasy 15 Adamantoise, you know if you know. So I'm like struggling. Barely any MP left going into this fight. I already used up my MP potions. It's a struggle, but I get this dude in a loop where I consistently apply debuffs to him, but he doesn't want to attack me with his big charged up attack unless he's like all sorted, right? Because then if I apply enough debuffs to him, for some reason he was like, okay, I have to like purge these for myself first. But because I had Heizme as Faker, I would always just reapply the buffs or the debuffs if I could. But I also had some consumable items to lower his defense, and with Hulkenberg, I could use one of her abilities to lower his like agility. And while I had like barely any MP left on Stroll and who I called the protagonist Jay Makoto though was on Merchant. So I had grinded enough money so I could just pay to win this thing and throw gold attacks at him, and it felt good. It was tight. It was tense. It was down to the wire, but I managed to pull through somehow, and getting that W felt so dang good. And this isn't like a rare event when it comes to Metaphor Refantazio. A lot of these bigger fights feel this way to me. I'm playing on hard mode. I think they got the difficulty just right, in my opinion. And I think the archetype system is a beautiful system because it gives you so many different ways to play, but also to customize your characters. So many different builds you can try out. I've been loving pairing Merchant, Faker with Stroll, who is now Samurai, because I can apply so many debuffs. I have some abilities inherited from Commander/General to give big buffs to my party, so Stroll can do a bunch of damage, but I can also be MP efficient on my protagonist with gold attack from Merchant, because Merchant is just hilariously overpowered. Like, if I had any kind of nitpick, it would be that I wish that it was a bit easier to respec mid-game, because right now I feel as if my characters are locked into specific builds, because I would need to grind a bunch of archetype XP otherwise to allow them to spread the wealth, if that makes sense. Like, nobody on my team knows Gunner, or has like leveled up Gunner. And I just unlocked Sniper, so for me that's pretty much just a dead archetype, at least for now. But I imagine the game will smooth out down the line, like either I'll just gain more and more archetype XP, so getting an archetype up to snuff won't be that big of an issue, or they'll just keep throwing me those archetype experience items, which I have been making liberal use of, by the way. But yeah, just playing the game has been fun, and I haven't minded these side dungeons all that much, because the combat has been so rock solid. It legitimately makes me want to play Shin Megami Tensei after this, because I find the turn system really compelling. I don't know what it's called. I know it has like a specific name for it. Lord help me if I can remember what it's called. But the way this game does the turn system, in my opinion, is so fun and compelling. Persona has the one issue, in my opinion, where like the longer and farther you get into it, it gets really easy outside of like super bosses for the most part, because the one more mechanic is so powerful, especially in games like Persona 5 Royal. But in this game, getting additional turns, good god does it always feel good. But it's not like, oh, I got a critical hit on Stroll, I'm not going to immediately be able to just pump out another heavy strike attack or slash attack on all of the enemies all at once, because the extra turn I got will probably end up going to like Hulkenberg or something. So it still feels rewarding enough to play extremely well, but also I don't feel as if the game is almost trivializing itself. I think on the whole, the game has struck a really good balance between being difficult, but still fun and manageable. And I've liked the bosses so far from what I've played. I like the variety in different archetypes you get, like Merchant and Faker are just really cool ideas. Faker giving you the ability to randomly gain a bunch of additional turn icons is such a cool idea, and I make extreme use of it sometimes. And you feel as if you're borderline cheating when you get Faker to give you 4+ turns 2 times in a row in the same turn. But when you get it, you feel so powerful in a good way. Like, sometimes the enemies can feel as if they're throwing random BS at you, but you can also throw random BS at them. I really like it. The row management is a mechanic that I made a lot of use of early on and have kind of forgotten about for the most part. Relatively recently, I'm going to start probably taking a bit more advantage of it, but I like the idea of it. There's a lot of good strategy involved with this game, from the scheduling to what archetypes to pair with each other to what inherited skills you want that can really round out certain weaknesses you may possess if you go into a certain dungeon or boss fight. Oh, this guy's weak to fire, but none of my guys have fire implicitly. Good news, I can inherit that skill or inherit fire onto them, so I can still maintain my build but have what I need to really pad out this fight. I love the inherited skill mechanic. Such a good idea. I don't know if it was introduced in Metaphor Refantazio. I know Persona has had inherited skills, but it's like when you make the persona instead of being actively able to swap them out, like with the archetype system. It's just a really good implementation, in my opinion, with Metaphor Refantazio. I talked about this before, but the characters are all stellar. I love the character of Luis. He's a ton of fun. The voice actor nailed it. Man had rent to pay or something. Every line hits. His writing is S tier. The writing across the board in this game is so good, in my opinion. A lot of very memorable lines delivered expertly, in my opinion. I have one slight issue with Luis so far, but again, it's one of those things where it's like, remember, this is a midway impressions video, so chances are this will be rectified by the end of the game. Luis has largely just been kind of there. Like, yeah, he stabbed the king in the intro, and man showed up during the funeral. But outside of that, he's just been kind of there and yaps at us occasionally. I am in Brylehaven, by the way. In case I didn't make that clear before, I'm in the middle of Brylehaven right before I actually go into the actual dungeon there. I imagine he'll be more of a presence later on. They are also building Juna up to be a significant character, and judging from like the box art for this game, I imagine she's going to join our side at some point. Yeah, I'm just overall a big fan of this game. I thought I was going to like it going in. I didn't think it would hit this much for me. Genuinely, I didn't. And I also think Metaphor Refantazio is an excellent example of atlus writing. And by that, I mean that they are experts at introducing a new party member and making them feel as if they were always there and are a part of the squad. The work they did with Heizme is like S2. It's so good. Man feels as if he was there from the beginning, but he wasn't. They do such a good job of knowing when to use comedic relief, when to be emotional, and how to tie a character's story into the overall plot and make it compelling and interesting. And the themes that Metaphor Refantazio tackle are pretty mature, and I appreciate that. A lot of the writing in the second dungeon is really depressing, but it's so well told, in my opinion. I like how dark this game can get, and I like how unashamed this game is in being dark, in being aware of what it's trying to tell you. I can appreciate its bluntness. And honestly, I just want to play more. I haven't had a game like this where I'll stream for like 3 to 5 hours, turn off the stream, and immediately want to continue playing. It's a game that I think about a lot, even when I'm not playing, and to me, that's generally a sign that the game is really damn good. Honestly, my hat is off for Atlus here. They've had a stellar year so far, and if this is the way they're ending the year, what a way to end it. Good God. Now when it comes to, like, where do I think this game goes from here? If it can keep up this pacing, and if it can keep up this competence when it comes to telling the story and unraveling what's going on here, and if the game can keep up this quality, chances are it will be my game of the year this year. It's close between this, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Black Myth Wukong. I'm largely unaware of spoilers when it comes to this game, but for this game, I just have this nagging suspicion in the back of my mind as if it's building up to some giant fake out. Like, I think the calendar in-game stops at October. I wouldn't be surprised if they add a few months and it's like some big reveal. Maybe they don't do that. I don't want to really lean into that theory because I don't want to set up expectations that that game is not going to, like, overcome, because I think that would be unfair. Like, my one main concern is that the game is just going to be, we're in a competition for the throne against Luis. By the end of the game, we get our 1v1 with Luis, we win, we become king, Paga's game ends. Maybe the prince dies, maybe he lives, or whatever, game ends. I'm a bit concerned that's the direction they're going to go, but I'm not too concerned. I'm willing to hear them out when it comes to whatever direction this story is going to go in the future. I just really want to see what happens next. And if you don't mind, I think I'm going to end this video so that I can go put stream up, so that I can play some more. What a dang good fantasy this turned out to be, huh? Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It'd really help the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.